Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. All right, Mr. Brett, we are on episode number 47, and it's going to be a special one.
Very special indeed.
Yeah, so first let's remind our listeners to please join our Facebook group, the Glum Lot Podcast Facebook group. And if you need to contact us, if you want to contact us, we're always looking for new guests as well. The Glum Lot Podcast at gmail.com. Let's get right into it because, you know, we don't get sober to just go to meetings, come home, and sit alone in a room and just not drink.
Exist, right?
We want to be able to open up our lives. There's a lot of things we did while drinking. We were drinking, but we were doing those things.
Yeah, they kept us in.
Golfing or a hobby or whatever, something to do while we were drinking. Well, now we're going to try to do things we enjoy without drinking.
Right.
And I think what a lot of people find is that you weren't really doing them before.
No.
You know?
No, it was only for one purpose.
Yeah. And so, you know, for me, I mean, I was in bands when I was a teenager, and in sobriety, I met guys in AA that play music, and there's a lot of people that play music.
Yeah.
And I joined a band, and it's become like a really, really great part of my life. And this podcast, in fact.
That would be mine.
But we have a guest today who has kind of gone the next level. He is a stand-up comedian from New York City. He lives in Brooklyn. He contacted the show. His comedy is based around his experiences with alcoholism, addiction, and sobriety.
Yep.
And the guy he's all over the place. Now that I know who he is, I looked him up. He's all over YouTube. He plays at Caroline's in New York City. He plays all up and down the East Coast doing shows. He plays at a lot of colleges. He's got a comedy special coming out. He's got an album coming out.
He is a busy man.
He is a prolific guy, and I can't wait to hear his story. I first want to introduce him with just a little clip from one of his videos.
Put your hands together for Patrick Holbert!
I knew I had a problem drinking when I was 25, so I started Googling, how do you stop drinking? And of course, AA kept coming up, so I went to AA.com, which didn't help at all because that's the American Airlines website. I drank for 3 more years. My name is Patrick Holbert, and I'm a stand-up comedian. In my career, I've performed thousands of sets all over the country, produced several shows for MTV. I work as a substance abuse counselor and recovery coach, and I have almost a decade sober. I work in comedy clubs and bars every single night.
Thank you so much!
I love talking about my alcoholism and my sobriety and my comedy. I have a lot of friends that they think I'm an expert of some kind. They're like, dude, do you think I should stop drinking? And I'm like, well, you are driving. I think jokes are just great coping tools.
I was so stupid when I drank. I thought if you went somewhere with a 2-drink minimum, that meant every time you went to the bar.
Most of my material is about alcoholism, substance abuse, mental health issues, family dysfunction, heartbreak. It's a real scream.
The last night I ever drank alcohol, I came to out of a blackout in a White Castle drive-thru with no car.
My show is a hybrid of stand-up comedy, storytelling, cautionary tale.
Welcome to my TED Talk of shame, everybody.
Being sober for almost a decade, now I have all these stories and things I've processed that I want to bring to you.
All right, so that was a clip to introduce you to Patrick, and without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Patrick!
Patrick!
Welcome to the show, Patrick Holbert.
Patrick.
So, Patrick, do you like Patrick or Pat?
Yeah, I like Patrick.
Okay.
I grew up as a Pat. I was a Pat. I always was. And then when I met my wife, she was like, "You should go by Patrick."
And so you are literally next Pat.
Yeah, exactly. I also realized I in crowded environments, loud environments, somebody'd say, "What's your name?" And I'd be like, "It's Pat." They'd be like, "Tad." Brad, Matt.
Right.
So Patrick is so much more. You know exactly what the name is when you hear it.
All right, so we'll call you Pat then. Yeah. All right, so anyway, we usually like to start with your sobriety date.
Yeah, August 23rd, 2008.
Okay, and we also like to rewind to the start of your first experience with the effects of alcohol.
All
so,
details.
How old were you?
I was 18.
You started late.
Yeah, I was a freshman in college.
Shit.
Grew up in an alcoholic household, so I did not like the way alcohol looked.
Yeah.
And my brother and I had this pact: we're not going to be like Dad. And my brother went to the Marines, and he started drinking. I went to college, and I started drinking. And
Out the window it went.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember thinking, oh, I get why Dad drinks. This is awesome. Like, of course I'm going to drink.
What was awesome?
In high school, I'm lucky. I'm an extrovert. In high school, I was Mr. Popularity. I was the prom king. I was the homecoming king.
Nice.
I didn't even play sports. I was just friends with everybody. I was in the student government, wrote for the school newspaper, had a girlfriend, had sex for the first time after senior year of high school. So I felt like by the time I was off to college, I was big man on campus.
Heck yeah.
But then I got to this new campus where nobody knew me, and I was like, all of a sudden I'm shy. Nobody knows me. I'm nobody.
Right. All the juice is gone.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a tough spot for a guy with a personality like yours. That's got to be a tough spot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I made it 6 weeks into freshman year. And my nickname, by the way, in high school was Sober Holbert. People called me Sober Holbert.
No shit.
Because I was the designated driver. I would drive all my buddies to the parties. And so freshman year, I would say to people, "Oh no, I don't drink. I'm Sober Holbert. I don't need to drink to have fun." I was really proud of that.
Yeah.
And then 6 weeks into school, it was just kind of like, man, I don't know a lot of people. That seems fun. All my buddies from high school who always did want to see me drink, they would try to get me to drink. They were like, dude, why not? You don't drive. You don't even have your car here. You can't drive. You might as well drink with us.
And what better way to fit in and get started than head right to a party? Or go to the bar, right?
Yeah, so it was three cans of Coors Original, and they were warm.
Yum.
So it was gross.
You choked him down.
Yeah, the first couple I was like, this is disgusting, but then I felt the effects. I felt what the problem area for me is I felt funny. So I felt funny and loose, and I could just connect with a whole bunch of new people immediately. That very first night is the first time I hooked up with a girl on campus, and it's like, wow, that's just
quite eventful.
This shit is fucking magic.
Look what it did.
This is magical.
Exactly. That's what I tell people. It was like I found a magic potion.
So you fell in love.
And a lot of people say, well, Coors Light is not magic potion.
Right.
That's piss.
Right?
Especially warm.
Yeah.
But you fell in love with the effect.
Exactly.
Did you drink for effect going forward after that?
Yeah, like the very next night. So I only had 3 cans that first night. The next night, it was 5 bottles of Corona. Same thing. Great time. Met all these people. Maybe that was the night I hooked up with the girl. I can't remember. But yeah, and then it was basically all I thought about. Like, I thought about, when do I get to do that again?
Social lubrication.
Yeah, and I was pretty good about it for the first 6 months. I think I drank on weekends, like
pretty manageable
with my friends. Yeah. And then I just loved getting really, really drunk and partying and doing crazy stuff. And the connection between being funny and people telling stories about me was very
got you the attention you were looking for.
Exactly. So it was college.
So you're in college, you're off to the races, and I'm assuming from the way you're talking about how you drank that your disease escalated pretty quickly, right?
Yeah. It was exactly a year later when I got back to school sophomore year. After that first summer, I had that summer I stayed on campus to do the orientation program, and I started drinking liquor that summer with a neighbor of mine in the dorm. And that's when the crazy stuff started happening at parties. Like, I would take off all my clothes and run around and, like, basically sexually harass people. Back then, this was the summer of 2000, so we weren't talking about this stuff
quite there
the same
yet.
way.
Yeah,
right.
there was no Me Too.
We had one of those. The guy used to strip down completely, completely lather himself up with Crisco and run all over town doing exactly what you just said.
That sounds kind of nice.
Greased up naked guy.
Oh,
from,
yeah.
What show is
we
that?
called him the Hot Chicken.
Family Guy? Yeah, no shit.
No?
Yeah, and I just loved when people told stories about me.
Yeah.
I liked being a legend. I liked all those things, which I knew, like, I also knew was nonsense, and I knew that it was artificial, that it was the booze that was like this giving me these superpowers or whatever.
It did feed your ego, though, right?
And
Totally.
I love the fact that your hat says legend.
I forgot about that. I stole this hat from my wife.
Yeah. Likes being that legend.
So yeah, it's September of that next year. I did this whole orientation program all that summer, living a double life. I was a student volunteer or student leader or whatever, and then I was also like this crazy party guy. And then the mental health counselor on campus came to me in the first weeks of school, and she said, "You got to come talk to me because I keep hearing these crazy stories about you." And she basically, I think somebody said, like, yeah, the word she said was, "I heard it sounds like you become a different person when you drink." And then she said, "I can't say you're an alcoholic, but from what I'm hearing, it sounds like maybe you're an alcohol abuser," which I was like, what does that mean? Is that if you let a can of beer get too warm before you finish it, you know?
Right.
And then she asked about the family history, and I told her about my dad and all that stuff. So within a year of starting to drink, people were already telling me to keep an eye on it, or perhaps you shouldn't drink at all.
Right.
And then, obviously the long story short is I drank for 9 years in total, and it just, it progressed.
Right. And it was off the fucking chain most of the time.
Yeah.
Were you also a maintenance drinker at all, or no?
No, I drank to get drunk. Like,
Okay.
I liked getting drunk. And,
To get to the spot that brought you what you wanted.
Yeah.
So
and
blackouts too?
I had a couple hazy nights.
Yeah.
Where, like you kind of, if I mixed weed with it, my memory would do real weird stuff. Like, I don't remember whose apartment this is. How did I get here?
Right.
But I'm still conscious.
Like a gray out.
Yeah.
What about other drugs? Usually for, young people, other drugs are offered when you're partying with people. Did you get into any of that shit?
I loved beer. I drank for because I also liked the feeling of being full.
Okay.
Like, I loved knowing I drank 20 beers tonight, or I'm drinking. I remember going on a camping trip. Me and my brother and our friends, we all drank the same way. We got 126 beers or 124, whatever was the math of like multiple cases of beers. And we were like, we're finishing those today. We're doing it. And like, just the pride of like drinking all that beer. There was something so...
We're professionals.
I'm with you on that one. That's the first person that said that, I think. And I'm right there with you. It was that feeling of...
Now, see, for me, I didn't like being full, and so I completely got away from beer and went right to Wild Turkey.
Yeah.
On the rocks, in a glass, and I would just drink the glasses, and, for every glass of Wild Turkey I'm drinking, there's 4 beers.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to feel full.
Yeah.
I want to be light on my feet,
Yeah, it could slow you down.
Yeah.
I got into Jack and Ginger when I started living in New York City because I learned... Well, what happened first was we went on a cruise, so I bought a bottle of brown Listerine. I dumped out all the Listerine and then filled it with Jack Daniels to bring in my luggage so we could save money on booze.
Right, because we're good like that.
Man, that's
we're
good.
crafty. So I went on the cruise and sipped Jack and Gingers the whole week, and I fell in love with that as a drink. And then living in the city, I realized, I can go on the train to work in the morning with a little bottle
with my
of
Listerine.
Jack and Ginger, and it just looks like a bottle of ginger ale. Or I could come home from work. I actually wasn't that much of a morning drinker, but I would drink in public with this little mix. And what I noticed about was the proportion started to shift. It was like less
Till
and
it's
less
a splash
soda.
of ginger.
Yeah,
that's what I did too.
And then I really, now actually, it's really good smoky smelling whiskey that really makes my mouth water now.
It's tequila for me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I hated tequila.
Oh,
I was a
God.
bartender when I was in college. That's where my drinking really ramped up.
Yeah.
But I would pour tequila, and every time I was pouring people shots of tequila, I'd have one for myself because I just could not drink it.
So you like filling up the car too, right? Because
Filling
that
up the
shit
car?
smells like gas to me.
Oh, you know what, though? The
I
weird
don't
thing
know.
about it was when I was drinking, this is a while ago, right? There wasn't all this like flowery, fancy, not every star had a tequila brand. It was fucking Jose Cuervo, and that was
Right.
kind of it.
Yeah.
And that was the certain scent of that just really made my mouth water.
Yeah.
And to this day, if I catch this whiff of tequila, I'm like, holy shit. And and they say that your olfactory system is the deepest, most primal remembrance
Totally.
device. And for
Totally.
me, it is, yeah. And that worked for me. So you have the sit down with this person in college.
Yeah.
Do you take it seriously, or you're just like, well, fuck that
No,
shit?
I'm trying to write a sharper joke about it, but of course, Dr. Schwartz wanted me to avoid alcohol. But after that meeting, the only thing I avoided was Dr. Schwartz.
Oh,
Right,
I
that
just-
makes perfect sense.
I just decided if I just
Yeah.
never see her again, she never looks me in the eye, I don't have a problem because she's the only one that knows the truth at this
Right.
point. So yeah, and it was too bad because
Did you realize it was the truth at the time, or no?
Yeah. There,
Okay.
and maybe I think it was in denial at that point.
Yeah.
But I think I knew. I think I knew I liked. I think I knew I liked drinking the same way my dad likes drinking.
Yeah.
And that it was a unquenchable thirst. Like that. Once I started it, I just wanted all of it.
Was never enough.
My dad, too, was an alcoholic, and he was a maintenance drinker, and I was a maintenance drinker. But I do remember the first time I ever caught a really good buzz in my teens going, holy shit, this is why he drinks. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
And from that day on, I was like, this is my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, like me, you probably hit the point where there started to be consequences, and it wasn't really working.
Right.
And it was kind of becoming a problem instead of a solution.
Yeah, or creating problems.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, so the pattern I fell into was I would drink and meet new girlfriends, and all of a sudden we would be in a serious relationship, and I had probably 3 viable relationships that would have been great partners for life, like marriages, whatever, and just repeatedly I ruined them and became pretty cruel to them. A classic thing with me was I knew how to be a fun acquaintance to lots of people until midnight, at the work party or whatever, but then after that it's like going home to the girlfriend. I'm a cruel, horrible person to them, or family members, like my siblings and my parents, like took the brunt of my cruelty sometimes. So, and that third girl, she gave me the ultimatum. I was 25, 26, and I really wanted to make it work with her, and she was like, "You keep doing this." So I quit drinking for her probably a dozen times. She kept taking me back.
How long would they last?
Like days or weeks or whatever.
nothing.
Oh, she was competing with another girlfriend.
Yeah. And
Booze.
it was, it basically, I just knew that was never going to end. So that I finally did quit for her and to save that relationship. And then, of course, I had already done too much damage, so it still didn't work out. But
No, when you say I'd finally quit, you mean you went into meetings or you went to rehab? Or?
No, for me, I went to therapy for 6 months. I had a big bias against meetings because my dad went to meetings, and I remember seeing his books around the house. And I remember there was a time, like, Mom would say, like, yeah, Dad's going to a meeting, or he would say, I'm going to a meeting. And in retrospect, like, I talked to him when I first did finally start going to therapy. I remember calling him to say, hey, I quit drinking. I'm seeing a counselor. I couldn't even say therapist to him. I just felt like...
Therapies for people that are nuts.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm seeing a counselor. I quit drinking. And he just started sharing with me, because I never knew the details, and he said the longest I ever went was a year. You'll do okay. I remember this. He said, you'll do okay because you've always been good at meeting people and being an extrovert.
Sure.
Your brother and I, it's much harder for us because we're
Can't open up.
Yeah.
Was he sober at the time you were talking to him?
No.
Okay.
He hasn't been sober in a long time, and
Okay.
I get drunk dialed to this day.
Oh, shit. Beautiful. Hey, what's up?
And drunk texts the other day.
Start recording them.
Yeah. He just drunk texted me the other day to shit on me about where I have a show this Saturday night. He's
Wow.
Like, I heard Otsego, New York, they're sending you to the middle of nowhere, which I think he's actually trying to connect and be sweet.
He's busting your balls.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you go to this counselor, and so does he or she? Does he connect with the alcoholic in you?
Yes. No. He was a. I think he was more into NA. He was a cokehead, and he was open about it. He's like,
okay.
you got to. He's like, you got to go to meetings. Because at the time I was when I was in my bottom, when I quit drinking, I was not a comic yet. I was trying to make it as a rapper.
No shit.
And I would tell him,
Damn.
like, dude, I don't know how I can not drink and throw these parties and do my shows. He's like, go to meetings. You're going to meet other musicians.
Right.
You live in New York City. He told me, go to the Soho group. You're going to.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and by the way, my therapist was not a good 12-stepper. He would just like out people. He'd be like, he's like, I remember when so-and-so brought in so-and-so, like big celebrities and musicians. I remember when so-and-so came in, he would come to the meetings and he was playing Madison Square Garden. And
He was trying to get you to go with that.
yeah, he really wanted me to go.
Yeah.
And he's like, there's models that go to that meeting. Like, there's other young people.
So he knew how to motivate you.
I was going to say.
And I assumed, because I had my bias was it's going to be a bunch of farmers like my dad who are miserable and cranky, and it's not going to be fun. And I also, when I quit for the girl, I was like, I'm going to quit for a year, and then we'll see what happens.
Oh, of course.
And so I was
healed.
like, I didn't know if I wanted to admit that I was like, I needed a program or that I was like, I didn't actually. You know who I kept thinking of was Dr. Schwartz. I was like, I'm not an alcoholic. I think I'm an alcohol abuser.
Right.
So I think maybe if I take a break, I can kind of like rein it in.
Get a grip on it.
Yeah. But yeah, so for 6 months, he told me to go to meetings. I would go back. So I counted weeks. I was like a pregnant lady. I was like, yeah, I didn't drink this week. So I got 2 weeks now.
So did you take his advice and go to your first meeting?
Not until the relationship imploded and I had to move out and get in my own apartment.
But at that time, you were basically you were just dry.
Yeah, I
so
was
you're
dry.
fucking alky without booze.
Yeah.
And no recovery.
And
that's miserable.
And that I always say I think that's why the relationship didn't work out, because I wasn't going somewhere where people like this guy was a 12-stepper for decades, but he did not explain to me resentments or any. It was kind of interesting. He never said like, by the way, there's other people probably trying to save their relationship at the meetings. Like, I wish he would have said that, because if I met somebody else who was trying to avoid divorce or something, maybe I would have connected and had
somebody you could
community.
Now, so
relate to.
you were married to this woman?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, but if you did,
I was
okay.
serious, yeah.
Yeah, so you guys were living together?
Yeah, we were living
Okay,
together.
so there's that whole logistics of breaking up.
Exactly.
Big deal. You want to try to keep it together, but it doesn't. It doesn't
Right.
work. And so she leaves, and now you're left alone,
Yeah.
and you're not drinking.
Now, were you really, really into her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get married.
Yeah.
I like really was envisioning a future with her. At the same time, I had this huge resentment toward her, which was, you took away
Getting
my
in the way.
identity. Because my whole identity was, we met at work. I was the party guy at work. If you wanted to know where the party was, ask Patrick.
Yeah.
He knows. I had a reputation for being a cokehead. I've never touched coke in my
No
life.
shit.
But
Because of your
You were just
personality.
naturally
because of my
that way.
personality and what alcohol did to me. So everybody would come to me, and then she makes me stop being this awesome guy. So I was
Right.
like, fuck you. You've totally
But she
ruined
was also
my whole.
probably thinking you would remain that awesome guy just without the stuff, right?
I
And
think-
so when you changed, maybe.
Yeah, well, the way I've been trying to talk about it on stage is like, she fell in love with this guy who is exciting and spontaneous and awesome or whatever, but then she realized that sometimes like exciting and spontaneous is like kind of terrifyingly unpredictable with alcohol. So I think she did want me to kind of like rein things in and grow up a little bit. I mean, I was 27 years old or whatever. So
Yeah. So that whole thing blows up. Now you're alone.
Yeah, and
And
then
do you take a stab at your first meeting?
yeah, it was after that, because I that's what I always say was my spiritual experience or whatever, because I very much had that fork in the road moment where it was like, okay, she's not telling me what to do anymore. I was making a lot of money because I was like all of a sudden good at my job because I was sober or dry, and I took on workaholism. We could talk about that whole thing. But I was making money, and I'm like, I'm going to get this cool-ass loft by myself, and I can be the party guy again. I can meet lots of women. I'll give it another try. Or I can do what George is telling me to do, my therapist, and like give it a real shot to get sober. And I decided to go to a meeting.
What was your first meeting like?
I did go to the Soho group, and it was powerful because that room, it's in Lower Manhattan, and it's like 100 people are in there.
No shot.
Young people, good-looking people. I remember a guy stood up, to say, I just wanted to share that I passed the bar exam today.
Wow.
And the way people responded to him to give him support made me like get all, I'm a sensitive guy. I got all choked up and I was like, this is amazing. And then when they asked if it was anybody's first meeting, I raised my hand and I stood up. I didn't know you didn't have to stand up. And I said, I'm Patrick, and I'm an I could not produce the word, pronounce the word alcoholic. It was crazy. And then it was a speaker meeting, and the woman who spoke told several parts of my story.
Sure.
And I was like, this is amazing. And a guy gave me Living Sober and a big book, and
Nice.
he said, come back. A bunch of guys took my number, and people texted me the next day, and I thought that was weird. I didn't know how that worked. And
Did that kind of freak you out a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, why are these? It's like a cult. People are trying to get me to go. Oh, you got to come back.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't realize people did. Because I didn't go to another one for 2 more weeks. I was
shit.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, this is. I can see how this will help me, but I'm not gonna be a nerd about it or whatever.
Right.
And finally, one of the guys said to me, he's like, yeah, most of us try to go every day if we can. And it's and because I was just sort of too smart, or I've got my friends already.
It's a tough age.
I don't need
That's
more.
not atypical for an alcoholic at all, especially if you're what they would call a high bottom drunk, like I was.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
I didn't come out of jail.
Same.
I didn't lose a home.
Nothing.
I didn't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
I just was in a very dark place, and so I bounced in and out for the first 6 months. I had met my sponsor at my first meeting, and he's like, "Yeah, you got to go tomorrow, and I'm going to pick you up." But I'm thinking to myself, that's fucking weird.
Yeah.
And then you go to meetings, and all these people would come up in there to introduce themselves.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me at the time a little creepy.
Yeah.
But after
Sure.
I learned how it worked, I'm like, God damn it! If they didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be sober.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't until I had a year. I became a lurker. I started going every couple weeks, and I was like, I eventually realized I love going to meetings because I'm a people watcher. I like hearing funny stories.
Oh, yeah.
They were just great.
It's a good show.
Yeah, New York's got great meetings, and I was just like, I'll just keep going because I do feel it helping me, but I'm not gonna get involved. I'm
gonna observe.
Yeah, and I told people. People who would ask me or approach me, I'd say, I'm just dipping my toes in. I actually remember this guy, Josh. I was sitting on a bench near this church waiting for the meeting to start. And he goes, you've been coming around a long time? Or how much time do you have? And I was like, I looked at my phone. I'm like, I think it starts in 15 minutes. He's like, no, how much time? How long have you been sober for? And I was like, oh, I actually don't know. And I had to think about August and do the math. And I guess it was 7 months or whatever at that point. So I just didn't know. I never counted days there because I had 6 or 7 months when I started going. And when I saw people counting days, I was like, oh, should I have done that?
Yeah.
And then when I had a year, it was the first time I raised my hand to say anything about time. And just the applause did 2 things. It stroked my ego, but it also made me feel connected to this thing. And I got pretty emotional. And then a guy came up and said, you should have a sponsor if you don't have one. And I got my sponsor that night.
Well, let me ask you this then. So their first year, it sounds like you're practicing the first step, and that's it.
Yeah.
Did you get into 2 and 3? Was there a spiritual program that you start to work?
I think I've always been spiritually curious, and I really did start I was open to hearing about all that
And
stuff.
you hear it at the meetings all the time,
Yeah,
of course.
I wasn't practicing any of it in a real way. I remember going to a meeting in a yoga studio that was very spiritual, and they would lower the lights, and there was a meditation aspect. And I remember thinking I need this. The chaos in my life, I need to slow down.
So you weren't completely closed off to it.
No, I guess I was always skeptical of the Christianity angle of things.
Yeah, the
Religion.
religious part.
Yeah.
That turns
but-
a lot of people off.
Yeah, but but even now I'm I go, my mom and my sister are very involved in church, and I go hear my sister sing. I cry every fucking time she
I'm a
sings.
crier.
Yeah.
Are you a crier?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I'm the guy that laughs at people that are crying.
But quite
Fool
often,
fucker.
people that do go through the program and experience sobriety, even the ones that, and it does say it in the big book, that, we may find that eventually, that side of things. So that's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, were you in stand-up at all before you got sober?
Yeah, my first stab at doing stand-up, I was 19. It was the summer of 2000. I was interning in Times Square at MTV Networks, and there was a restaurant on the corner. It said stand-up comedy open mic, and ever since I was a kid, I wanted to do stand-up comedy. So I signed up, and I did 3 of those, and they all went so horribly that I was like, I'm not doing
Like
that.
no one laughed?
Yeah.
That's an ego killer.
And when nobody knows you, like the comics who are putting on the open mic, if they don't know you, they're not going to put you up early in the show. So I was going dead last at 1 a.m. in the middle of the week, in the dead of summer, taking the train back out to Long Island, and it was just like, wow, it's 3 a.m. I'm getting back to my dorm now. Nobody laughed at me.
So what was your, how long would your set be?
I guess that was probably like a 4-minute open mic.
Okay, and did you wrote your own stuff?
Yeah, I would go with a list of ideas, and I was 19. I didn't know, I was an idiot, like I didn't have anything very interesting to say. So that was so miserable that I was just like, I'll just start a band with my roommates. So I started a band, and I just wanted to recreate Beastie Boys' License to Ill. I was like, let's just write stupid party songs, and we did that for a while. And then,
but the whole time you're getting fucked up, right?
Yeah, and that became an environment just to drink and party, and
be creative
and break rules. I had again, the double life at school came into play because I had access to the TV studio. I was the TV station manager, so I would hold all of our band rehearsals there. We'd bring coolers of beer, and sometimes we would even turn the cameras on and just broadcast live to the campus in the middle of the night and just abuse all of this responsibility we had.
Did that bite you in the ass at all or no?
We did get in trouble once. I never got fired. I made amends. I sat with the woman in charge of that whole department like 3 or 4 years after I got sober. I was asked to come speak about TV production stuff to the students, and I said, by the way, can I talk to you afterward? And I said, I always abused the responsibility you guys gave me, and I don't want to be that kind of person moving forward in my life, so I just wanted to share that with you. And they did the classic thing of like, you were great. We loved having you around.
Right,
and it's like, you don't know the depths of the stuff I was doing, But yeah, the music stuff became an avoidance tactic for the childhood dream stuff was always, I would like to be a funny person on stage, but it's too hard. And the instant gratification of drinking and the safety of being in music just became how I expressed myself creatively while I was a drunk, basically. So the band broke up after college, became the rapper. You got to
explain to me how this shit happens.
Yeah.
So you're in a punk band. You tried stand up. You're like, I could be a rapper.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to do. Literally, I said to the guys, I want to create a band, and we'll just make something that sounds like all the songs on License to Ill. Let's obviously not copy them or plagiarize them, but let's make something with that vibe, like simple drums, drum machines, even guitars and verses.
Yeah,
like let's
ride that wave.
Me and my buddy Josh, we always freestyled and we loved rap music, and I can't sing, so I was like, I'll just shout stupid rap lyrics. And
did you have any success with it?
No.
Was it fun?
We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun, but the guys in that band, they were too talented. Our drummer and guitar player are amazing musicians, and they really like more like emo punk stuff, and so they started writing really beautiful melodic stuff. And eventually I was just like, I'm not that interested in making that genre of music. So when I started working and drinking in the TV industry, I was like, I always knew I want to be in front of the camera. How do I get this like creative stuff out?
Sure.
So I just like got some mics like this and Pro Tools and drum machines. I just started making my own stuff in the apartment, and played a lot of shows and had some like.
So you had some success. To have that.
Success in terms of like all our friends would come out and it would be a fun party, but it was never good.
Right, not commercially viable.
No, it was really, really bad stuff.
So how did you get back into stand-up?
So stand-up came back in my life when I guess I was about 5 years sober and bottoming out on workaholism. I started a production company. I had these big contracts that were going well, But the show I was working on is basically like a teenage drama documentary series, and I realized I'm working all the time. I'm like burnout.
Yeah. So you basically experienced transfer addiction. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Because you know what it was? It was like I grew up without a lot of money, and booze made me feel like I was somebody, and then you took that away. I'm like, well, I don't feel
how do
so
I still
cool.
how do I quench that need to?
Yeah, and I always thought if I have a lot of money, people will respect me and they'll think I'm cool. So I chase money, I chase contracts, and turns out that doesn't work either to fill the hole that they talk about. And so I found other people in the rooms who were having similar struggles. Somebody was starting up a Artist Way group. I don't know if you guys have ever done the Artist Way. It's like a creativity workshop. It's based on the steps. It's a 12-week book, and I had dabbled in it by myself a few years before that, but it's the classic thing of like, we can't do any of this stuff alone. You know, you got to do it in a group setting. So I did the Artist Way with a group of people, and like, there's all these like writing exercises and readings, and you're all sharing, and it like all signs pointed to like, give this another shot. And I was 29 or 30 at that point. No, I was older. Anyway, 31 or 32, I think I was when I did that, and all signs were like, go do stand-up again. So I started going to open mics and just sitting in the back and not performing. I would observe for a while, and then I did a couple, and this was 2012. It was right around Hurricane Sandy, whenever that was, and I did 7 or 8 open mics that all went horribly, and the job came back and said, "Hey, we have another project. We can give you a $300,000 budget. You just got to get us the finished product in 6 months." And it was just that thing of somebody dangling a better, easier option and a piece of instant gratification. And I took it, and then I burned out again. Like I burned out again.
Yeah.
So finally, the third attempt at doing stand-up was after that project went totally sideways.
Now, are you going to meetings this whole time?
Yes.
Working the steps?
I was, yeah. I did do the steps in the first 3 years, and I was very close with that sponsor at the time. Where I drift from the program and things get interesting is after I go back to stand-up, and it finally sticks. My third attempt, March 4th, 2014 is what I call my anniversary for stand-up. So I went, I found other people. I did it with help this time. I found other people who were just starting. We basically counted days. We counted mics together, basically. Yeah. And I finally felt aligned. They talk about when you're aligned with your higher power and your purpose, higher purpose, whatever.
It kind of becomes effortless. Like it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Just get out of your own way. It's going to happen.
And I just decided I don't care if I suck. I'll just let myself suck for a while, and then eventually it'll all come together.
Right. Surrendering to the process.
That's exactly.
Yeah. And that's when I was like, I don't need meetings so much. I'm having so much fun.
I know. I get it. Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, comedy open mics in New York City are whatever the opposite is of a meeting.
It's fucking drunk fest,
there's
right?
There's booze everywhere. There's young people with all the defects just like oozing out of their pore. And my own, all my defects were totally unguarded or undealt with or whatever. And yeah, From about like years 5 to 8, I was going to meetings, but there were times where I was going to like 2 a month or whatever.
Yeah.
And I kept my time, like I never picked up, but I started doing plenty of other weird stuff.
Those old behaviors return, right?
Yeah.
Character defects pop back up, and they're not checked.
Yeah.
So when you say that you had some success, does that mean people are laughing? You're finding stuff that seems to work.
Yeah.
Your writing's improving.
Yeah. Like I took the work of it seriously, and I started producing shows, and people getting like a couple of the shows I had were some of the more popular ones in the city or in my scene, I guess. And like getting booked on other people's shows, basically starting to feel the experience of respect from your peers.
Yeah. Right.
That kind of started happening.
And so I always hear that in comedy, like timing is everything.
Yeah.
Is that something you develop over time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I think of timing is everything, somebody just asked me yesterday. They said, "Do you ever wish you would have stuck with it from July 2000 when you first tried?" And I was just kind of talking it out with him, and I realized if I did stay, I might not have survived it. Because if I drank that way in a scene like that, there's just too much stuff around. There's too many drugs around.
It consumed you.
Yeah. So the timing of waiting this late in life to start at 32, I was 32 or 31 on March 4th of 2014. I think it was good timing. And then the timing with performing and delivery and all that stuff, I think it's, it's just something that...
So how did, and this is the big question, I guess, how did your stand-up comedy and your experiences in recovery meet?
Yeah, so I guess around 6 or 7 months into performing, I was just grasping at straws. I would go to open mics and just like try to tell stories about things that happened to me, or like try to make observational jokes about the world or how other people are or whatever. And I can't recall what the first joke was or what the first story was that was autobiographical around alcoholism, but whatever it was, it got a big laugh and it felt easy and natural, and people wanted to know more. People said that was really interesting what you said about, like I said, I wish I could remember what the first thing is that I tried. I probably have recordings of it because I'm a little OCD and I record everything. So I think it was when I realized that people are drawn to people being vulnerable and honest. And it's like the rooms. It's like you can tell the difference between somebody being real and open and somebody like trying too hard.
Yeah.
Or,
God, yes.
Or like reciting a script or something.
Yeah. Yep. There's Milo.
Yep, he's here.
He's in every
nice.
episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
I used to.
He's doing shots up there.
Sup, dog?
Yeah. At the start,
There's also this piece of wildlife
there's
right
a
there.
spider crawling across our table, and Matt's going to eat it. Yum, yum.
Wow.
I used to edit Milo out. Now we just leave him in.
Yeah,
I think it's nice.
It's part of the crew. You're having some success in stand-up, and are you starting to make any money with it?
The money came when a buddy of mine said, he was like, there's like a whole network of like recovery comics. This is a buddy of mine who he started in Pittsburgh, and there's a guy named Mark. God, what is Mark's last name? I've never met Mark or worked with him, but he's a recovery comic, and he's like, this guy Mark, it might be Mark Halprin or something like that. He's like, this guy Mark makes a living doing conventions and big shows and stuff like that. So I started sort of like sniffing around to see what is out there. And then I started looking at my material, and I realized I have like 40 minutes worth of stuff on just drinking stuff.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So I should put something together. And I guess I was only like 4.5 years in. I was also driving some other comics to college shows where they would say, we'll give you $100 if you can drive us there, and then we're going to perform at this college. And they get paid well at college. And the more they got to know me, they were like, you should put together a show about addiction and recovery and present it to college students, and that you can make good money doing that. So it was sort of a shrewd business decision to like write this solo show that I do I've now been doing at colleges for 5 years or whatever, to figure out how to make money.
Right. So you found this niche market, and you're like, these are my people.
Yeah.
And this will work.
Yeah.
And I can actually make a living off it.
Yeah. I can't make a living off of it.
Well,
yeah.
I'd say, so but you're also a counselor, right?
Yeah, I work as a sober coach, companion, recovery coach, I guess.
How did that happen?
So in New York, there's a few agencies, and LA, it's like a very West Coast thing. And they, I just had friends who were like, I work for this agency. It's like sober companion work. You'd be good at it. Would you ever want to do it? And I was always like, I don't know, that sounds weird. And then when I started comedy, it really became this thing of like, okay, comedy's not going to be the way I make a living. I got to figure out how to make money. I don't want to go back into burnout mode and take these big contracts just for the money. So I was doing corporate video. I was doing some camera work for other people. And then the coaching stuff came up. And basically it was a friend hooked me up with this one agency. And now I'm on like, I think 3 or 4 different agencies.
So when you
rosters.
say sober companion, do you have to wear like a vest? and no one can pet you when you go in the store.
Yeah. Well, it's all different. It's really interesting. It can be totally different. I mean, I've lived with people for days on end for.
Wow.
I've never even heard of it.
It's like 12-stepping almost.
You'll see it in movies. It's like, I'm trying to think of, somebody told me the new Sherlock Holmes with what's her name, Lucy Liu, has a whole storyline involving a sober companion.
Really?
It's what's the socially appropriate way to say this? It's for people who can afford a higher level of care.
Okay.
It's like Steven Tyler needs to go on tour, and I'm making this up. I don't know that he has a sober companion, but somebody gets out of rehab, but they got to go on tour. They need somebody to be their wingman to help them keep drugs out of their face or booze out of their mouth. I had a couple. I've never actually have not worked with any names, but it's oftentimes. Young people from families that just want them to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And right now I work with a few people, and they're not, lately it hasn't all been substance stuff. A lot of times it's behavioral, like a lot of ADHD stuff where people just need help doing basic stuff. Like
Sign me up then.
Help me.
ADHD guy. Oh, boy.
Yeah, like help me apply for jobs, help me get out of bed, help me clean the apartment. Yeah, it's totally an accidental thing that happened, and sometimes it's very, very rewarding and beautiful and transcendent, but more times than not, I feel like a glorified...
babysitter?
Yeah.
I was gonna say
you said it, not me.
Okay. Hey, so we're at the end of our time for this episode. We're going to have you come back for episode number 48, if you don't mind.
I would love it.
We've got to get more into what happens with your comedy, what you got coming up, and how you navigate sobriety in a world full of drugs and alcohol.
Yeah,
so,
I would love to.
Pat, thanks for coming out. Until the next episode, I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
I'm Patrick Holbert.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.